So I left school at 16 with pretty much nothing. But I had this idea that I kind of wanted to be a civil engineer, building these things. I loved it. It was the best job I'd ever had. I managed a team of 25. We had really good turnover, really good profits. And I learned, I was able to live my passion. So I was building things, problem solving. We don't tell our story very well. We are rubbish at telling us. So much I think industry can benefit from integrating and working more closely with universities, and they're not at the moment. So how can I really help encourage that interaction, and so companies can get the most out of the opportunities?
Andrew Aveyard, how you doing?
I'm great, thanks. How are you?
I'm not bad. We got here eventually.
We did.
I'm trying to think. It was definitely last August that.
Yeah.
I know it sounds terrible. Came across your name, but the article that you and Jim Brown put out just caught me when it came to skills. I like to think I'm big on skills, or I have a passion for it. I know you do too. So that's part of the reason you're here. But I'm so happy that you've wanted to come on the podcast.
No, it's great to be here.
Great stuff. So as we normally do in the podcast, we'll go for a bit of your career. We'll dig into net zero, the crossover between academia and industry, and how they're joining up and how they could join up better. And then we'll definitely dig into skills as well. So I'm really excited.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's go.
So what sparked your interest in engineering?
So I look back at my career and what got me interested in this, and actually it was Lego. As a kid, I really enjoyed building Lego, and I built all kinds of stuff, from spacecraft through to fire stations, the lot. And I'm a problem solver. I'm quite practical. And so from that early stage, I was interested in sort of building things and doing stuff. And, the classic building the dam on the beach to stop the water actually getting to the sea, all that kind of cool stuff. And then in my early teens, I was blown away by a pumped hydro storage facility that I saw, and was really caught by that size of these buildings and, what you were doing, creating energy. So, as a wet behind the ears 15-year-old, for my design project at school, I built a hydroelectric dam, obviously, as you do. So a table like this, I had a chicken wire, paper mache, I stole a dynamo off my mum's bike. It didn't work at all. But the idea was there, building this hydroelectric dam at scale. And so I'd been fascinated by that sort of building, that sort of practical stuff as a young teenager. I was also a bit arrogant as a young teenager. As teenage boys, I think sometimes are a bit confident in their own abilities. And so for my GCSEs, my mock GCSEs, I did very little revision. I got really good grades. I thought, great, tried out for the real thing. Didn't work out quite as well as I'd hoped. So I left school at 16 with pretty much nothing. But I had this idea that I kind of wanted to be a civil engineer, building these things. So at 16, I went to college full-time for a year, did a diploma in construction engineering, so looked at kind of your basic plumbing, brickwork, timber, all that kind of stuff, really enjoyed it. But a lot of people I knew at that stage were getting jobs. So I was like, why would I just be at college? I could get a job and they could put me through college. So I typically, in my still fairly confident manner, I walked into a job interview at a company I never heard of before called Arabs, only arguably the best consulting engineers in the world. And my line was, I could be as good as any of the engineers here. Because as a teenage boy, why not? I had that confidence in my own abilities. And I think they liked that confidence. And so they offered me a role. And so I went in as a technician. And I have to say, I was incredibly lucky, and got the opportunity to work in multiple different departments, so from planning to structures to civil engineering. And I found myself actually in transport planning, and I really liked that sense of designing junctions, designing traffic going through junctions to maximize the capacity of junctions. And that really caught me. So I was there for about 2 years. During that time, I started seeing graduate engineers coming in from university and getting paid almost double what I was getting paid. I was like, hang on a minute, because I was having to teach them how to do the job. And so I was like, I'm not sure about this. So I distinctly remember making the decision between buying a Peugeot 205 GTI or going to university. And I thought, if I go to university, I might be able to buy myself a Porsche one day. That was the rationale there, And so yeah, I made the decision. I looked up, and at the time, Napier University was the only university in the UK that was offering transport planning at undergraduate level, and it was combined with a civil engineering degree, which was ideal for me. So I applied, got in, packed my bags, because at that point I was living in Birmingham, and drove what felt like most of the way up the country. Like I knew nobody in Scotland. I literally knew not a soul in Scotland. And I arrived in September '93 in Edinburgh, fresh-faced. And yeah, spent 4 years doing a degree in civil and transportation engineering, really enjoying it. If I'm honest, I went to university to get a wife, and get a degree in that order. I didn't quite get the wife at that stage, but actually I had a great time, learnt a lot, really engaged with the lectures. Didn't do so much revision and still didn't do brilliantly exams, but was fascinated, learning, and really enjoyed. And I think that's what really kicked my curious nature, which I still have to today. Came out of uni, went back to Arups actually, not in the graduate route, but as a technician because they knew me. So worked there for a couple of years, bounced around through quite a lot of different consultants, getting up to senior engineer stage, and then I was made redundant in 2009 in the crash around the banks run, which was actually the second big break in my life. It's interesting how failure has really shaped my career and shaped my life in a way that you wouldn't expect. But being made redundant in 2009, a friend of a friend said, I've got this company who are doing renewables, wind energy, would you be interested in a role? And of course I jumped at that chance because I'd still had this idea in the back of my head that I was interested in renewables and hydroelectric schemes and stuff. So in 2009, I joined Green Cat Renewables, an engineering company primarily building out wind farms, small-scale wind farms. So farm charities, communities, that sort of scale, 1 to 3 wind turbines. And so I grew with the company. I was staff number 12. So I grew with the company through their growth as the government at the time prioritised renewables and had a fit tariff and a ROC tariff. And so over those 8 years, we built out about 350 megawatts of onshore wind, some solar, some small-scale hydro schemes. And I loved it. It was the best job I'd ever had. I managed a team of 25. We had really good turnover, really good profits. And I learned, I was able to live my passion. So I was building things, problem solving, really engaging people, and building out renewable energy that was going to have an impact on society and the environment and get us to net zero. And so I was in my element. Then the Conservative government came in and chopped all of the tariffs for onshore wind. I had to make probably half of my team redundant. You had this team that was doing amazing things, and it was really painful to have to turn around and make that as cuts. And we got down to a staff of about 8, and at that point they didn't need someone like me running the team. And so I kind of fell on my own sword and stepped back. I was very lucky to get the opportunity to go and work for a company called Nova Innovations, who are a Thai energy company. And so they were a small startup at the time and had just built the world's first tidal array. And so I went there for a year that was more a business development role. And then the Conservative government, there's a theme here, decided to change the tariffs around offshore renewables, including tidal, and it got to the point that there was going to be no funding for tidal energy in the UK. So I co-wrote the business plan that basically wrote me out of a job because the focus had to be in countries where there was going to be tariffs for tidal. And so I ended up leaving Nova. I went to EDF Renewables for a year. Had an amazing opportunity to optimize a 350 megawatt remote island wind project out on Lewis. And we were looking at trying to, through engineering techniques, optimize the project to get the price down from about £96 a megawatt hour down to somewhere below 50, so we could bid into auctions for CFD. Really enjoyed that role, looking at really cutting edge techniques to optimize a project and get that cost down. And so, again, a theme, the Ofgem at the time didn't think the business case for the interconnector was made, and so they denied the request for an interconnector to Western Isles, and EDF decided at that point to cut the project, and so I found myself again on a hunt for a job. At that point, I'd had lots of interactions with the university. I really enjoyed the people I'd met there. I really enjoyed the vibe. I think that's the cool phrase that my kids are using now. But that atmosphere of learning and curiosity, and shaping that next generation. I've always had a passion to nurture people, and so when they said, "Look, would you be interested in this role, linking our academics and research with industry?" I was like, "That sounds really interesting." And so, yeah, six years ago, I thought this would be a good 2-year job, and then I can jump back into industry. But 6 years on, I'm still at the university, still really enjoying the balance of cutting edge research, but also understanding what the commercial necessities are, and trying to align that research we do within university with what the commercial needs are within the industry. So I bounced around a lot, but I'm still at heart almost that 13-year-old boy that is curious and wants to make an impact and likes that problem-solving ability. It's been a fascinating career. Really enjoyed the different things I've done. I don't think I'd change it. If I was that 16-year-old boy again, would I revise for exams? Probably not. But actually, where I've got to, I'm really proud of that career that I've had, the people I've interacted with, the connections and relationships I still have in the industry. So yeah, it's been a really interesting role, and it still is, and still enjoying work every day, which I think is the aspiration, right?
Yeah,
getting paid to do the things you're passionate and skillful in. So
that's it. You nailed it. You've said the word I use a lot, which is passionate, and it's interesting when you mentioned and you've went through your career. When I speak to a lot of students, I speak to students all the time, and it's my bit of advice is always try and follow what you're passionate about, because it'll keep you going when there's challenges, and you've obviously went through quite a few of them. But what's interesting is you've still followed the same line of where you were, as you mentioned, when you were 13. What's also interesting there, what you've mentioned, is your career so far has almost kind of described exactly what it's like to be in the net zero world of being a developer, going through years of development, and then it maybe going nowhere, or a challenge that nobody sees. People just see wind turbines going up and down, or are we hitting our targets? But they don't realise behind the scenes that there is a lot of, there's consents, there's technological developments and design and all the rest of it. The first thing I want to kind of nip into there is you mentioned being a civil engineer, or partly studying civil engineering. You're the first civil engineer on the podcast, and I get asked a lot when you bring a civil engineer on. So anything particular within the civils world that interested you, and also within the world we're in now, which is the push for a lot of infrastructure projects, where do you see civil engineers fitting into that and their critical role being?
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? As a civil engineer, you can often be the butt of the jokes if you want to, if you look at boring in the dictionary, you'll see civil engineering. I've been there, I've lived all those jokes, but you have to remember that civil engineers are the core of what we do. They are the people that ensure the buildings are built. They are the people who make sure the designs are right. I have to say, I love the role. My parents saw me as this outdoor boy, as a young kid. I enjoyed climbing trees, and they wanted a job that I would be able to do both that curiosity, problem solving, but also be outdoors. And that's why they channeled me in the direction they did. And I think I really enjoyed the problem solving that civil engineering has taught me. I am an engineer at heart. And although a lot of what I do now is more commercial, I come at it at that engineering approach to understand the problem, try and break it down so I can understand what the solutions might be. And that all comes from my training as an engineer.
Yeah, it's the engineering mindset, isn't it?
No, absolutely.
And people, a lot of people see job, and I say this a lot. The glossy job titles on LinkedIn, for example. But when you actually look at an engineer, no matter how commercial a role they go into, the majority of them have that underpin of being an engineer and the mindset that the process mindset that goes along with it.
It's amazing. So I work at Edinburgh University, and I'm very privileged to, and it's an amazing place. And sometimes I get frustrated. It is a university. It is very old school. It's very traditional. And I have occasionally, I'm someone that likes to challenge the norm. I ask the difficult questions because I don't want to do the same thing that we've always done, because often that hasn't worked, or in a new world and it doesn't work. But one of the questions I raised is, why can't we do, a degree in renewable engineering? And the answer I get back is, you don't need to do a renewable engineering. Do civil engineering, do mechanical engineering. They will give you all the skills you need for a career, whatever that career is, whether it goes into some sort of fancy renewable titled job. The core skills that you need are going to be embedded within those civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering. They will teach you the skills you need for those jobs, whatever the title of your role is. And that's really stuck with me, as is clear. We're teaching people that mindset of being an engineer, trying to train them to think about a problem, break it down, figure out the core components, and then work out what the solution is based on from those engineering points of view. So, although I don't do much engineering nowadays, all the stuff I do is based on that engineering knowledge and that approach too. And it's been really interesting. I've seen people come into the university and work in the engineering department, and they come from maybe an anthropological background, and they just don't have that same structured approach to dealing with a problem and solving a problem. So I am an engineer, and I really encourage people to take that, whatever they want to do in life. It's a really good background, training, a degree, whatever course you do to get to that point of how you approach a problem.
That's right. Yeah, I think you say about challenging the norm. I don't think I'd be sitting with you if I didn't do the same thing as well. I don't think I'd have the podcast or engineer career if challenging the norm wasn't a key element of it myself. So I think we've got a very similar trend. Another thing you mentioned as well, tying into the renewables course, it's similar to the green skills discussion that's going on. To me, there's the core fundamentals of engineering and the skills that you pick up with that. Okay, industry might be leading towards more green technologies, but to me the skills of being an engineer come from the electrical, mechanical, civil, and then from there the soft skills get mixed in, and you get a nice kind of cocktail of talent that can be utilised across industry. I guess before we move into net zero and your current role and the world of the goals we're chasing down, has there been a notable project you've worked on or experience up to this point in your career that you think back to and go, that was a key moment? Was it the projects at Green Cat?
Yeah, that's interesting. I was reminded recently, I was doing a presentation, and one of the questions I was thinking over was legacy. When my kids were younger, we drive around Scotland and they go, "Daddy, were you involved in that project?" And I go, "Yes." Because a lot of these single turbines I was involved in, and I think the project I always go back to is a community project in the Shetland, and myself and one of the key people I worked with in the company were funding it. We went out on a limb. We hadn't got confirmation of funding. There were lots of question marks. We knew the project was really good, but we had to keep that project going to get to financial close to ensure it was built out. And I think we took a lot of risk because we really liked the clients. The clients were a community group, and we saw how much good that project could have in that local area. We saw the benefits it was going to have. We saw how good the project was, and so we took a lot of risks in getting the project. There was in Shetland, it's really difficult to build projects because of the weather, because of the difficulties, and there was a weather window which we had to get, and so I think we were very willing to take the risks as we believed in the project. And like, it's been amazing. The project has built successfully with no problems with it, and it has easily met its targets in terms of funding, and it's managed to return massive amounts of money back into the community. But it's recognizing where your boundaries are and how far that risk you can take. I do, for good or bad, take the value that I'd rather seek forgiveness and ask permission. I know my limits, I know where the boundaries are, but within that, I will often probably go beyond what some people would. My risk appetite is great. When I built teams to work with, I've made sure that the people around me are all quite risk averse, because I know in my own nature that I'm willing to take risks. Like, there are very few that haven't paid off, and there's learnings from those. But generally speaking, I try to take that risk for the benefit of the project and the benefit of the people around that project. But that singular project has stayed with me, and I look back and I still look at it going and think that's done amazing things for the community. So
That's interesting. Okay, then, so there's been a few articles I've read over the past few months which you've wrote or contributed to, and I'm going to read elements out of them, and we'll kind of dig into it. So the first one, which we spoke about beforehand, was in last April, May, just before All Energy in Glasgow, and it was in The Engineer. If we prioritise innovation, collaboration and sustainability through a combination of technology advancements, policy interventions, financial innovation and workforce development, the UK can transition towards a renewable energy future. So, taking the key elements out of that, starting with technology. As someone who's kind of immersed in the net zero world and the projects which are within it, what do you see as the exciting technologies that we haven't tapped into yet? Is there any in particular that you think could be a buffer or could push our ability to achieve net zero quicker, or do you feel that we're maximising our technologies?
it's a good question. I think one of the issues we have is there isn't a single magic bullet to solve the problem around sustainability and net zero. It's going to need multiple different technologies, multiple different processes to be able to get us to that point where we are in an energy system that's a net zero. I think there are lots of really interesting technologies on the horizon. We've done work with quite a number of companies looking at what are the innovations coming over the next 5 to 15 years that could have an impact. You saw recently that the UK government has looked at giving some more funding towards Project Acorn, which is CCUS, carbon capture storage. Also, they've given money towards looking at small modular nuclear reactors. Both are really exciting potential technology advancements that could have an impact. We also see working in the background a lot of work around hydrogen. I know it's been a big buzzword and a big thing in this for the last 2-3 years, but we're starting to see projects actually come through. I'm not sure I believe the hype around hydrogen, but then I'm not a naysayer either. I think it has a really good opportunity to deliver in seasonal storage and other really key elements that we don't currently have in the sector. I think one of the problems we have at the moment is messaging as an image. With the changes in government in America and the stories that are coming out of there, we're moving away from net zero is becoming a difficult word, and you can't say you're doing this project to get to net zero. Projects have to be commercially viable. They have to be feasible. They have to show a rate of return, and that they always have. But actually, we have to change our messaging as an industry. We have to make sure that these projects are going to be financially and commercially successful. Now, the problem we have in the renewable sector is that fossil fuels have a 200-year head start on us, and so there are issues around curtailment, there's issues around intermittency of renewables, that we have ideas about how we solve with storage, but we don't yet, most of that storage devices and technology is immature, except for the very immediate storage of lithium-ion batteries and other forms of batteries. So we can do immediate storage, so I walk the talk as well, so I've got PV, I've got solar and a battery. That works really well for me as an individual, as a house owner, that actually I've generated quite a lot of solar today already, and that will discharge this afternoon and over the peak this evening. So that immediate storage we generally have for households and small businesses. But we don't have that next generation. So we're looking at what's the best technology for storing electricity for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, or for months. And although we have things like hydrogen storage, the interseasonal storage capability of hydrogen is great, but we haven't kind of perfected those technologies yet. So I think there are some really interesting technologies. Like I was in meetings last week at the university about biological storage of energy and biological photovoltaic. These are TRL level 1, so they're like 20 years away probably. But again, that's the thing I love about my job. We're doing direct stuff that impacts on the energy system today, but I'm also looking at stuff that is way in the future and ideas we have. I increasingly come back to thinking a bit about geothermal, and I don't mean, we see some heat networks that are based on geothermal, but what about deep geothermal? There's been question marks around how much energy that could produce. I had a meeting earlier in the year about space solar, so channeling solar through satellites to Earth and gaining energy that way. Like, this is part of the job I love, because you hear these really interesting concepts and you're trying to work with these companies as they go from that high level concept right through to delivering on the ground. And so there's companies like XG Cubed who have taken ultra high temperature temperature storage, thermal storage, to work as a battery, and they've spun out from the university and are doing great things. So I don't think there's a single technology that's gonna revolutionise things. I think we need a whole suite of technology that is developed over the next coming years that helps us get to that net zero in terms of energy usage. And you have to look at the balance as well. So we are going to need oil and gas for decades to come, not just for energy, but for plastics or all the other things. So we need to have a balanced portfolio for our energy system, and we're getting there. And it's just going to be a case of a number of years waiting to get to a point where that tipping point is there, and then we can really have a sustainable renewable energy system with good storage in the middle of it.
There's a number of points I want to pull out there. So do you think that, and this is maybe crossing over with the skills part, but hopefully we can look at it first of all from a technological point of view, and going back to that 13-year-old, who was interested in problem solving and hydro, and similar to myself, I was always someone who wanted to know how things worked, that good old saying. Do you think the PR around what can be within our technologies is good enough? Do you think we talk about it well enough? Because when I think, there's two things that stand out to me. So Hinkley Point C, which has had a lot of coverage for good and bad. I mean, regardless, it gets a lot of coverage, and then SMR, small modular reactors, they get a lot of coverage as well. I don't think that we tend to get a lot of coverage around net zero technologies, net zero projects, and then also the types of projects that can be. I don't think it hits the news as well. And my concern around that is that that's what pulls people in. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think you're absolutely right. So I've been talking to the industry for a while now around skills, and this is a crossover, so we'll head into it. we don't tell our story very well. We are rubbish at telling our story. Like I've been in renewables, working in around renewables for 15 years now, and in my own echo chamber on LinkedIn and social media, it looks great. But we're not breaking out of that. We're not selling the story. We've got an amazing story to tell of how wind power, solar power, renewables are providing clean energy, sustainable energy to vast swathes of Scotland in electrical forms. And we're quite good at telling ourselves in the industry that, but actually the general public don't see that and they don't understand that. And that is bad on or has problems on multiple levels because the general public don't get it and don't understand it, and they just say their bills going up, and they hear some politicians saying all this green energy is causing your bills to be more expensive, and on the other side, we're not telling a generation of young people that there are amazing jobs in this industry. And so I've been working with a couple of companies to try and create or develop social media campaigns, particularly aimed at young people, to show them that they could have a career in this amazing sector. And not only would they have a successful, stimulating career that pays well, but they would also be helping change the world, get us to net zero, create a sustainable society. I think there's an amazing story there to be told. We're just not very good at telling that story. And I get, and the thing is, it is exciting. It's an amazing success story. If you look at what we've done in Scotland in the amount of renewables we have on the system, and the technology advances we've had, it is an amazing story. But we're just not selling it particularly well. And so, for both sides, for telling the story to the general public, but also getting young people like that 13-year-old boy, girl, interested in this sort of sector, we need to be better at telling that story.
Yeah. I did a talk recently at the IMechE in Glasgow, and I mentioned 3 lines which I think are so important, which is if you're a company, you can't be part of the solution. You need to be the attraction, because talent is picking other options. So there's really good statistics across the UK. So those who leave university, having studied engineering, 2/3 stay in engineering. So that means, to me, I'll do the opposite. That means 1/3 is leaving engineering. And then you've got the likes of aerospace, fintech, and being a startup, an engineer career. I do go to a lot of startup events. There is a massive, massive underbelly of financial technologies, startups, which is where talent goes to, because AI and money, etc. So therefore, if we're losing talent to that creates a challenge for us. So I guess this shoehorns us nicely into the skills discussion. But then another stat on top of that is out of the 2/3, like a low percentage are going into roles that are linked to sustainability. But at the same time, when I speak to students, and I'm talking hundreds, the one thing that they want to get involved in is a job which is linked to sustainability. So there's this complete, there's a break in the middle somewhere. So I guess around the skills piece, and we know that skills are going to be in demand, whether they are right now is a whole different discussion. Where do you see the current challenge around the workforce development being with regards to net zero?
I think we have to accept. My generation has to accept that things have changed. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and a large number of us lived to work. You were in the building at 8:30. If you wanted to show to your bosses you were doing well, you didn't leave until 6:00. I think what we're seeing is a new generation of people who want to not have that. They want a better balance in life. They want to work to live. They want to do jobs that are exciting. They're going to pay them a good salary so they can have a life. I think the pandemic showed that, because people realised there's more to life than just working. It goes back to what we were talking about earlier about passion. People want to have a passion. They want to be working in a job where they can be passionate, or where their passion can be brought out. And so there's a really interesting correlation there about how we inspire the next generation, that workforce that's coming through. And you'll have heard it from me already. Like, I'm passionate about what we do. I love working in renewables. I love the challenge of the new technology that's coming through. I have a passion for what we can achieve in getting to a sustainable world and a net zero. But that's a big challenge. How do we, again, it goes back to that, how do we tell that story? How do we get people to buy into that lifestyle of working hard? How do we encourage people? There's a lot, in the 80s and 90s, there wasn't this entrepreneurial spirit. There wasn't these startups. There weren't these small companies doing amazing things. You joined a big company and you're probably going to be there for 20 years. So as a sector, how do we encourage that sort of thinking, that sort of workforce? And there's some real challenges there because, I'm not sure, and I'm not sure we have all the solutions. But the opportunity is there. Like Skills Development Scotland have stated there's £230 billion worth of electrical infrastructure or energy infrastructure projects and opportunities over the next decade in Scotland. That's a huge opportunity for us as a country, but us as individuals to get involved in. So we need to find better pathways, better routes for people to get engaged in these projects, whether it's working with big companies like SSE or setting up their own company and doing something revolutionary with AI and data and whatever. But all that is needed if we're going to take a chance at getting or delivering these opportunities.
The picture I see is that you have two traditional routes that everyone knows when it comes to going into engineering. And obviously there is other roles within I keep saying net zero space, but sustainability and from town and country planning to community teams. It's so much more than just engineering, but this is the Engineering Career Podcast. So, but you've got apprenticeships of the different levels. You've got foundation, modern, graduate, and then you've got going to university, and you've got college as well, which tends to tie into either side, college with apprenticeship or college into university. And there is other routes as well, but if you think of those two traditional routes, there's quite a powerful graph you can create. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to develop it, but essentially the time it takes for someone on one of those schemes to impact real world work or projects. So a typical apprentice, depending on what company you speak to, and I've had exposure to multiple companies and multiple apprentices, they will work on a project and contribute within the first 6 to 18 months. Depends if you're, for example, at BAE Systems, you might go and do a year in a college and do kind of quite traditional tradesman labour. But if you're a non-destructive testing technician, you might do your tickets and be on within 6 months. So you think about those 6 months to 18 months, and then that increasingly gets more and more as you progress through your apprenticeship. You then take someone who goes to university, at the extreme case of someone who goes and does a 5-year master's, who doesn't do any summer placements because they're just unfortunate and can't get one. They then go into a graduate scheme for 2 years. They're going to be starting to work on a project somewhere between 5 and 6 years. Now, historically, you would class the more talented person would go to university, but we know that's not true because every route is important as one another. And I would also argue that some of the most talented people I've worked with do apprentices, so do apprenticeships. But if you think about that graph and the two extremes, we have a problem because in one regard we're pushing folk to go to university. In the other regard, you've then got apprentices, which we only cap at 25,000 a year in Scotland. So surely there is the opportunity for companies, and okay, it might lean to the bigger companies to take more of a investment approach in bringing in people who are in university earlier so that they're on a more structured scheme, in the summer, bringing in more volume, which might be a burden on them as a company, but it means they get exposure to the experienced workforce, which we know is starting to retire quicker, earlier, so that when they graduate, they are hitting the ground running, quote unquote, and not having to go on to as an extreme graduate scheme. Do you see that point of view? Or is that something you've ever had as a discussion within any industry partners?
You hit the nail on the head. I think we
just
do.
Gave him a whole business plan. Really. That's it completely.
Right,
done.
I'm off with it. There is a real problem here. I think you're right. I think the sector is evolving. I think those routes are still needed. I hope so, because I work at university. I don't want to undermine it, but I look back at my own career and think, as I said, I came to uni for a life, not necessarily the degree as a priority, and I think I didn't need that 4-year degree to do the job I do. I think for a lot of people, doing that 4 years is really important. It helps them really understand themselves and what they want to do. But I think, I'll take it back a sec. The research I have done shows if we want to hit the targets where the government is aiming for and the industry is looking to get to, in terms of ScotWind and a lot of the other infrastructure projects, we need about 5 times the amount of skilled workers that we currently have in the industry by 2029, 2030. I don't know how we do that. It's almost impossible to do that, especially if we stick with the current routes that we have. And so a lot of the work I've been doing over the last year, 2 years, is looking at how can we skill up a workforce to be able to as you said, hit the ground running with the knowledge and skill they need to do jobs without needing them to do 4 or 5 year degree, or even in some cases a whole year college. And so what increasingly we're looking at is, especially from a university perspective, is short courses. I think the other thing to think about is for this sector, we've talked fundamentally about raw talent, people who need training, but I'm looking at there's a whole part of society that we can reskill and then we can upskill and reskill. And so the priority for me has been what courses can we deliver? We have the skill at delivering courses at the university, but how can we repackage those in a way that they're accessible and flexible, so people can potentially come and do a 6-week course at the university and then go straight to a job, and they can follow that with online teaching, or they can follow that up with coming back and doing 2 weeks every year for a while to build up that qualification. I think we do maybe have to really be revolutionary in some of this and think about how we change, how we educate and how we train these people. So as you said, they can hit the ground running and have an impact in a much shorter length of time than the traditional models had people doing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just to be clear. I mean, people when they see my LinkedIn posts sometimes think that I'm anti-apprenticeships or anti-university. I'm still pro. Whatever, as an if I was speaking to an individual, I'm still pro whatever suits you as an individual. There's the industry, impact on you, but as an individual, you have to pick what's right for you, and you get exposure to the right people and have the right discussions, and that hopefully can give you the most informed choice. I would go back and do my 5-year uni all over again. I was one of the people who was fortunate to, in the summer of first year university, do a placement in Sweden. 3rd year did a sandwich course for 9 months. 9-month placement, which is a sandwich. 4th year summer, 5 months in industry, and then graduate. And so I'd had almost 2 years worth of work experience within a 5-year master's. And you don't see that as a structured option. You tend to see that as someone has fallen into that opportunity. And the discussion point I tend to have with people now is, if an organisation offers, a summer placement which runs from May to September, which tends to be when obviously university ends and starts again, even if that person doesn't come back to your organisation, you as an organisation is setting that person up to then go to somewhere else and is actually benefiting industry. So yeah, it's an interesting point, and there's definitely not a silver bullet for it either, but one that's interesting.
I would, I completely echo that. So I did a sandwich course as well, effectively. I did a placement in my 2nd year. But when I was in industry, when I was built my team at Green Cat, we really used that. We had at least 2, if not 3, 3rd-year placements every year, because they contributed, they were keen, they were eager, they had enough knowledge they could be useful, helpful. For me, it was also a kind of 1-year interview to see if that's the sort of person I wanted in the business. To be fair, most of them we offer jobs to at the end of the time. I do sense that industry doesn't use it enough. And I think there is a real I don't know how we sell. Again, it's all about, for me, it's about communication. It's about telling stories. How do we encourage people through those stories to take advantage of these opportunities? There's lots of, and again, at the university, I have lots of master students who are doing dissertations at the end of the year. And we don't have enough industry partners saying, well, could you look at this? It's almost free research. And so and part of the reason I'm still, my 2-year job is still going 6 years later is because there is so much I think industry can benefit from integrating and working more closely with universities, and they're not at the moment. So how can I really help encourage that interaction, and so companies can get the most out of the opportunities that universities have?
That's exactly. You think about the last time I counted, I think 13 universities across Scotland, and you think about, for example, mechanical engineering. Let's just say, I know it's not the case, but every university teaches mechanical engineering. They'll all have mechanical principles. They'll all have electrical and electronic systems. I would put money on, I bet you none of those courses, 12-week course, have a sponsor, an industry sponsor, which comes in and says, see your project, see the examples you're going to use it based on the projects we've delivered in the past. Yeah. And then you can just teach the same way you would, and then it will be, for example, Scottish Power, SSE, EDF Renewables, for example. This is how this happened. And then what that does is it creates a mindset into the students who then relate. So there's the good thing about this is opportunity. And it will build its way towards it, and we'll reflect in probably 10 years' time and say, we're so glad we changed it to be this way, but there's just great opportunities for this, I think.
No, so one of the courses I'm specifically very close to and involved with is we have a centre for doctoral training at Edinburgh. And so we have 10 NGD students come in every year, and we train them, and then they go out into industry and do a 3-year project in industry. And one of the things, we've just been refunded for another 5 years. And one of the things we did with that course is we said, this time last year, how can we change it to make it better? And actually what we did was we approached the industry and said, could you come in and teach elements on this? So things like wind resource, there's a company that does wind resource, so they come in and now teach bits of that. And we said to some of our companies, could you come and do a case study? Could you come and do a lecture on this so they really understand it? What we now do is on day 1 of the course, we take the entire cohort down to ORE, Catapult's, Blythe, blade testing facility, so they can see a 100-metre blade. They can understand the scale of what we're doing. But for me, it's all about how can we get industry more embedded in the training so that when these students finish their course, they are ready to go straight to industry. And it works the other way around as well. So I'm encouraging companies to come in and do a lecture about their company and about what they're doing to undergraduates as well, so that in year 2 of a course, the students already go, oh, SSE, they're interesting, I could get a job with them, or that small SME are doing really cool things, I could go and work for them. And it helps the industry partner, because actually this workforce, this future talent, is seeing them as a viable place to go and work, an interesting place to go and work. So the idea of working with that company is embedded in those people at a really early stage of their education.
That's pipelines, isn't it? That is the core of a pipeline.
Yeah, because I get a lot of companies coming to me and go, well, have you got any good graduates coming through? And it's like, yeah, but you should have talked to me a couple of years ago when they were in year 1 or 2.
That's it.
And raise your profile amongst this cohort. And so, because this next generation, they're choosing where they want to work. And so, and I think a lot of industry partners haven't figured that out yet.
That's exactly right. That's it. They're choosing. It's interesting. So closing off the skills bit, there's one last section. So at the start of this year, as an avid LinkedIner, I did follow you, and I do read your posts, and I do like them. You mentioned at the start of this year, you said, with regards to skills, various reports have shown that the number of jobs that will be created by both renewable and the infrastructure needed to transmit and distribute the energy are in tens of thousands. However, although we are seeking some really impactful individual projects, we are not seeing joined up government thinking and funding for serious skills programs to provide the workforce the sector needs. So that was start of this year. Is there any reflections on that? Has that changed? Is there anything that you have seen, green spurts of hope?
Yes, no, I think industry recognises this and the government recognises this. I've been involved in working with Scottish Government and a working life group looking at offshore wind skills and how we improve the pipeline. And it's really interesting to be part of those conversations at that senior level. So I'm very much encouraged that the challenges we have are being seen by both industry and government, and people are working on it. And I think we are doing some amazing things. Some of the developers are doing small scale projects that are having real impact. Ocean Winds are doing stuff around taking the van out and teaching people, but they are small project scale ideas. And so what I've been saying to government is we need to figure out how we can amplify those successful small projects, and so we can scale up the impact those projects have. As I say, I've been working on the social media campaign. How can we take that national so that impacts a much bigger audience and gets to far more people? And so I think there's some real challenges there at a national level about making sure we pick the right projects that are going to have impact. So yeah, I don't. I have a lot of hope. Yeah. I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't, but I think there's a real opportunity. We've got SOWIC, Scottish Offshore Wind Energy Council, who are doing some really interesting stuff. I'm very lucky that, as I say, I work with people like Sarah Murray at the Freeport, who are doing amazing things, and some really great initiatives coming through these sort of organisations, because we recognise that challenge, and we recognise we have to be innovative to actually get over this hurdle and be able to tell this story and sell this story to this next generation workforce, so they can be as enthused as we are at being engineers and solving these problems.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're coming close to the end, so back onto the kind of original script then. And so in your opinion, what are some of the most exciting developments happening within our industry at the moment?
Where you start? I know there's so much going on. I have to pick one.
It doesn't have to be within directly related to net zero, but something that kind of comes to mind.
So you touched on it, previously. I'm a real fan of tidal energy. I worked. I worked in the industry, so that's where it comes from. In Scotland, we are world leaders in tidal energy. We have 3 or 4 of the biggest and most advanced companies delivering power to the grid. We've had devices in the water for 10 years. So Nova Innovations, Orbital Marine Power, SAE Renewables. They've all had devices in water for years, and we're now at that tipping point of becoming properly commercial as an industry. We, as an industry, have got 93 megawatts of projects with government-funded CFD auction round projects. That sounds like a lot, but compared to sort of Berwick Bank, that's 4.2 gigawatts, is nothing. The scale is minute, but it shows that government is supporting these projects, and actually they believe in the industry. Now, work we've done at university shows that there could be up to 6 gigawatts of tidal energy and 6 gigawatts of wave energy by potentially 2040. If that runway of funding subsidies for the CFD are supported and continue to be supported by government. And I think the reason that I'm so passionate about tidal energy is that it gives the UK the opportunity to grow our manufacturing base. If you look at offshore wind, we've got lots of jobs for offshore wind, but a lot of those jobs are based in manufacturing, which is not done in the UK. We do a lot of assembly, but most of the parts are shipped here. And so whereas people like Orbital and Nova are building their devices, literally building their devices in the UK, and getting to a point where we can then ship them around the world. So we're building up that manufacturing base, that knowledge, that workforce who can deliver that stuff. And so I'm really passionate about tidal and those jobs as well. So, I think we looked at it, and about 4 in 10 jobs in offshore wind are based in the UK. The rest are based elsewhere in manufacturing, whereas 9 out of 10 jobs in tidal are based here because the manufacturing's done here, the development's done here, it's all done here. And so, it's been a real success story in the time I've been here. Like, part of the thing I really enjoy about the university is we have had such an impact in the tidal industry, and we continue to do, whether it's looking at better blades or looking at control systems or generators, or looking at how we encourage government to provide innovation funding for it, or how we look at modelling the ocean to understand how we can better capture the energy, how we can lay out arrays. There are so many areas which there's still an avenue to grow in, but tidal is only going to get bigger as costs come down, and we get, and that's going to come as we get volume. We know how expensive it is to build a bespoke design device, but once you're building 10, 15, 20, 100 a year, those costs drop down by a third. So although it is currently expensive compared to, say, offshore wind or even onshore wind, once we're back up a volume of building these devices, that price will be comparable to those things, let alone let's not talk about nuclear and Hinkley Point and how expensive that is. I think it is, as you've heard, I'm passionate about all kinds of renewable energy, but tidal is one of those things that is real, has had a real impact in my life, and I'm really passionate about.
Tidal's one as well. I think you and I spoke about it beforehand, because it's one again that you don't see as much about, but the technology is fascinating around. I always remember at university some of the kind of breakthroughs around tidal. So that was like early 2010, 11. I think it was around that kind of orbital, and then not really seen much. But even like 93 megawatts, it's not huge, but with 6 gigawatt kind of like goals, that's big, and that requires manufacture and the technology, and if it's going to be at home here, then that can only be good. Andrew, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. This has been brilliant. I think I certainly could keep going, and I think I hope the conversation does continue. I'm really excited to release this episode, so thank you so much for coming on. Finally, what keeps you passionate about engineering?
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's been great to be here. Really enjoyed the podcast and delighted to be actually a part of it. I think there's a lot of... I wake up every day and you could get sucked into the problems in the world. There's so much going on in the world that's out of our control. So I try and focus on what I can do and the things that are in my control, and try and work out where I can help solve today's problem. Focus on, what's that innovation, or how can I support that company who are trying to develop that widget that can be amazing? How can I help that individual that is struggling? How can I nurture them to ensure they can be the best they can be? And so for me, it's that even in little ways I can have an impact on a day-to-day basis. And so the opportunity to continue having those impacts on a day-to-day is what keeps my passion going.
Thanks a lot for joining me, Andrew.